Welcome to Character in Action with Matthew J. Norcross, the official podcast of the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Come journey with us on the real-life stories of character in action. And now here's your host, Matthew J. Norcross.
Welcome to Character in Action from the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. I'm Matthew J. Norcross here in the studio with Carmen Ramirez, filling in for Robbie Dillmore. Hey, Carmen.
Hey, Matt. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Perfect. Now, this week, we're speaking with John Dooling, a member of a board of the Chesterton Academies of St. James in Menlo Park, California. He joins us now over the phone from Menlo Park. Hey, John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Matt, and nice to meet you over the phone, Carmen.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yes. Now, before we begin, tell us what the Chesterton Academy of St. James is.
You know, I was going to get to that in one of your questions, but I'll briefly mention it, and then we can discuss it a little bit further when we get to one of your questions. But it is a classical Catholic high school in Menlo Park, California. It's been in existence. We're in our second year. And what sets it apart is that it's a classical curriculum, and Catholic theology is integrated into each subject. So it doesn't. It focuses on, philosophy, our faith, the Catholic faith. It has mass every day. So very different than what we're seeing in other Catholic schools, which have somewhat lost their way in terms of how they teach our young people. But again, we can get a little bit more into that when we address some of your questions.
Oh, perfect. So that being a member of the board of a Catholic school as big as that's a big responsibility. And that's actually the first trait I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, how do you manage this responsibility as well as balancing professional and family life? And how do you continue to do that today?
Good question, Matt. So it's a lot more involved than I ever anticipated. I'm an attorney. That is my profession. Mm-hmm. I'm general counsel for a group of construction engineering firms. So that does keep me busy. But this was something that I had thought about for a while. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine who now lives in South Carolina, him and I discussed classical education maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
Because we saw that certain schools Catholic schools were becoming more private schools rather than Catholic. So about 3 years ago, I was introduced to a couple members of a new board, which is now what is the Chesterton Academy of St. James. And they were starting this school and asked that I become part of the board. All boards need an attorney. I gladly raised my hand, but I'm not an educator, and starting and forming a school, Matt, as you are somewhat aware, your parents were involved in this endeavor, a similar endeavor.
The starting of Phoenix Academy.
Right, exactly. So we're, your parents and you have gone through this. We're on the front end. So it is a lot of work, but it is potentially one of the more rewarding things I've done. And, what we're hoping is that impact of the kids that go to the Chesterton Academy of St. James and graduate, will affect our society in a good way. They will be joyful leaders, but they will also be leaders that will be grounded in the transcendentals, in truth, in goodness, in beauty. So that that's somewhat, gives a thumbnail sketch of, the school. And then in terms of, our responsibility as board members, we had to first find a location. We didn't have a location until 3 weeks prior to our first year. And now but thankfully, by the grace of God and by the generosity of the Archbishop of our Archdiocese, we occupy the Archbishop's residence at St. Patrick's Seminary. So I couldn't think of a more beautiful location for the beginning of this school. We're blessed to be there, but we continue to want to grow. get the word out, and at some point outgrow our current space, and see where it takes us and where God takes us.
Yeah. I mean, I bet it was a huge honor to be a part of the school, wasn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, no, I mean, and that's, Matt, I was somewhat reluctant to do your show, but your persistence paid off, which is a good character trait in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't necessarily see myself as a man of character. I see myself more as a man of marginal character that is growing and attempting to grow in every day. But by doing things like this, hopefully assisting young men and women in their education, especially a classical Catholic education, helps not only them but helps me as well grow in character.
What are your thoughts, Carmen?
I just think it's so impressive how you start a school. I mean, just going to school is hard for some people sometimes, but I can't imagine, sitting there taking the time to build up a whole school system.
Yeah, that's exactly what my parents did when they saw a gap in the market,
Right. And I think that's incumbent on, there are gaps now. And I think good people, especially, I'm looking at it from the lens of a Catholic, need to fill those voids. And we're not looking to replace the Catholic schools, the various dioceses, but augment it, and provide an opportunity for those children and families that want more classical education, the ability to pursue that. And that means philosophy for 4 years. You don't see that in high school anymore. Latin for 2 years, Mass every single day. The Catholic theology integrated into each subject. God's creation integrated into math. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Fibonacci sequence, but that's this sequence that's a mathematical sequence. But it's also a sequence that you see throughout God's creation. It's part of His fingerprint. That is not only in math, it's in art, it's in living things, it's in music. So that's so the kids learn about our Catholic theology and God's creation throughout all of their topics, which is very different. And that's a true classical education.
Yeah, those are very great points that you've made to all of us and our listeners too. So let's move on to the trait of empathy. And my question to you about this trait is, how does empathy fit into not just your profession as a lawyer and as a member of the board of this Catholic school, but as being just an overall Catholic and overall Christian?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. I think in terms of your various character traits, all good. I think empathy stands out to me. It encompasses, and it's similar to caring. It encompasses the second commandment. It's loving your neighbor as yourself. God commanded that. It's willing the good of the other, and in seeing others as God's creation, it's John the Baptist. He must increase, but I must decrease. It's thinking less about yourself and more about others. A good example is Mother Teresa, who cared for the poorest of the poor and the sickest of the sick in Calcutta. And when asked how she was able to do that, she said she saw God in every one of the eyes of those that she served. I'm also a member of the Order of Malta, and each year the order, all the various associations in the world take malades, which is French for sick, to Lourdes to hopefully be healed physically. And not only is there sometimes there's physical healings, but more often than not it's a spiritual healing. But by doing things like that, you create empathy grows because it's not about yourself, it's about others. And, and I think that it's important, not only obviously for adults, but it's important to teach that in kids as well. That, if you can teach that at an early age, it's, something that will grow as somebody gets older. There's Balthasar, he was famous for saying that life should be about the theodrama, not the ego drama. And I think that's empathy. It's, knowing our place in God's creation and knowing that not everything is about us. It's about others. And that's, that's why it's one of the reasons why we're here.
Yeah, it is. So, speaking of Mother Teresa, that my parents actually saw a movie on Mother Teresa on television on what was then known as the Family Channel, and that was what led to the founding of Phoenix Academy. True story.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's one of the reasons why she's a saint. I'm sure she's inspired many people, Matt.
Yeah, she has, and everything you said was incredibly spot on, John. It really is.
Thank you, Matt.
And I'd like your comments, Carmen.
Yeah, empathy. Just opening the school and caring for future generations of people that believe in God, that shows me that you care so much for this world, and I'm glad to have you in it.
Well, thank you, Carmen. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So the last trait I'm going to talk to you about today is citizenship. Now, what does it mean to you as not just a lawyer, not just as a member of the board of Chesterton Academy, but someone as part of a community to be a good citizen?
Right. No, again, I think that's a good one, Matt, especially in today's society. I think about the familiar Marine motto and kind of an offshoot of that where, we've all heard about, the love of God, number one, love of family, number two, and then love of country. And I think that third, love of country, I think that's kind of our duty as citizens, which is to know about our Constitution, to know about our country's history. I think that's disappearing. It's not being taught in schools anymore. And I know it's being taught in our school, the Chesterton Academy of St. James. But if you don't know something, you can't love it. And respecting our traditions, knowing our Constitution, that's lost. I ask young people all the time. I'll ask them how many articles are in our Constitution, how many amendments. I won't ask you that question, Matt. But there's very few that can answer that question. I played golf. I was on the East Coast this last summer, and playing golf back there, typically you get a caddy. So I had a young man who was a senior at a local high school in New Jersey. And so I asked him, what he was studying, and he indicated that he was studying various subjects, but what interested him the most was American history and political science. So then I asked him my obligatory questions on the Constitution. He was able to answer how many articles in our Constitution, how many amendments, and then he was able to name me the first three articles. On one hand, I can tell you how many people have answered that question correctly. And then he pulled out a pocket Constitution out of his back pocket. Well, that's an anomaly, but that's what should be taught in our schools. Because if you don't know what our country is founded on and the traditions, you're not going to love it. And so I think citizenship is something that needs to be front center again. It's disappeared in terms of our obligations to our country and all the freedoms that it's given us.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Carmen?
Like they say, pledge allegiance under God.
Yes, Phoenix. When I was a student at Phoenix Academy, we would recite the Pledge of Allegiance every single day, and not a lot of schools do that anymore.
No,
but Phoenix still does.
I'm glad they do.
Yeah. So this was a short episode, but before we close, please share with us some thoughts on how we can bring character back into our culture.
Yeah, and I've certainly given that thought over the years, Matt. So I think first and foremost, bring God back into our lives, and in society. I think, without God, character is void. I think also number two, focus on the transcendentals, focusing on what's true, what's good, what's beautiful. You can't go wrong with those three. And then I think three, men reclaiming their God-given role as leaders, not only in society, but in their families. I think that that's going to bring character back into our culture. And then finally, good people like you, working on excellent initiatives like the 7 Degrees of Change. Those type of initiatives, and our little school in Menlo Park, those are the type of things that hopefully will bring character back into our culture.
All right. John Dooling, a lawyer and a board member of the Chesterton Academy of St. James. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Matt. Great to be on with you, and Carmen as well. And wish you nothing but the best with the 7 Degrees, and God bless.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Character in Action is a co-production of Firebird Media and 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Your host is me, Matthew J. Norcross. Our producer is Robbie Dillmore, who also does the intro. Filling in this week is Carmen Ramirez. Special thanks to everyone at the Truth Network. If you like our show, please listen to and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes are posted every Sunday. Thank you for listening, and always remember, everyone can be a phoenix.